Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the GTACC webinar, our emergency response series, just to support everyone with the contact center survival tips during this whole COVID-19 situation. And I know, this is just as a disclaimer, this was put together very quickly by a group of amazing industry leaders. And there could be some hiccups along the way because it was done very quickly, but all with a good intention. So before we start, and as people settle in, I'd love to start off with a survey so we can see where people are at in terms of remote workers. And it's just one quick question. So if you can just take a second to fill that in. Okay, I'll just leave it up for a bit longer as people come into the webinar. Okay, so let's just see. Let's see how everyone did. Okay, so how many do we have? We have 29% of our attendees have less than 25% remote workers. 4% is 25 to 50. Wow, over 50% work remote workers is 48%, and then 20% with 100% remote workers. So that gives an idea of some of the topics we will be speaking about today. So I just would like to introduce, as we get started, what we're going to talk about today. Our agenda for the day is the current state. Oh, sorry, I got to close this. See, pickup number 1. There we go. Okay. Okay, pickup. 1 second. Pickup. Got it. Okay, thank you. Thanks for your patience in advance. So on our agenda today, we're going to be discussing the key challenges and focus areas of what's happening in the current state. Survival tips focusing on capacity channels, remote teams, which is big, employee well-being, so critical right now, and survival tips through technology, because technology is enabling so many things to happen right now. Modified process and policies, empowering our people and our customers. And throughout, we want to have a lot of interactive discussion because we're going to grow and learn together. I'd like to introduce our panel members here that have put together a lot of thought and insights, and they're here to serve. I have Afshan Kinder from Switchgear, Ivan Kovacevic from Star Telecom, and Neil Glynn from Choristry. So this team has worked very quickly, very hard, and we're here to support everyone. I'm joined by Mike Aoki from Reflective Keynotes as moderator. He'll be fielding all the questions, and if you want to participate, I'll show you how to raise your hand. And my name's Sangeeta Bhatnagar, and I'll be hosting and moderating the questions in today's webinar. So the whole purpose of this started because I've been getting so many phone calls, and I know other people in the industry have been sharing and getting a lot of phone calls. So we thought, let's share best practices so we don't feel so isolated and just like running without knowing exactly what others are doing. We want to answer any of your questions. And if we don't know it, because we're all learning together, we'll be able to work as a community to help each other. And that's a big part of this. And the whole reason behind GTACC is we connect, learn, and grow together. So even though we're all in working remotely and from home and a lot of, isolation, we're not going to be totally alone. We're here for each other. So we want your questions, and Mike is ready to receive them, and he'll be fielding them. So just a little housekeeping. On your right-hand side, you will see in GoToWebinar on the panel, you'll see I've circled in red there where you can type in your question, and it will go to Mike. He'll be trying to get them into the webinar. Whatever doesn't get answered, we'll take care of after the webinar or even on the following session, which is next Friday. If you'd like to share a story, what's happening, what you're doing right now, you just click on the little hand sign. There's a little red box around it. Click that, and that will go to Mike. He will then, at a chance where he's able to, unmute you so that you can start speaking. And I just want to remind everyone that we want to be mindful of time because we just have 1 hour, and we'd love to hear from as many people as possible. Okay, so what's our current state? Well, there is a lot of anxiety. Everybody's experiencing something because of loss of control, with so many sudden changes, uncertainty in many areas of life, a lack of information. And, the causes with the retail closures, travel restrictions, the numerous health advisories, it's creating new levels of contact volumes, urgency, and totally shifting consumer behaviors. And we're seeing a lot of that, right? And that's causing even more stress. It's creating that anxiety with that social distancing now. And we are social creatures, but now with all the isolation, it's driving the remote work model. And this is going to be for some time. So there is a need to quickly adjust, and that's what we're going to try and all do together. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Afshan Kinder, and she's going to share some of the issues that we're seeing right now.
Thank you, Sangeeta. It's great to see the community really come together. And in the various clients that I've been speaking to, and people have been calling me, and it's great to see everyone connecting with everyone else. And so we have three kind of key areas we're going to talk about today. And there's a series of webinars because we only have an hour, and there's so many things to talk about. I think everyone is experiencing higher call volumes and longer wait times and longer average handle times. We're maxing out in capacity from a technology perspective, and also getting that balance between, capacity for staffing and serving their needs and customer needs. And most importantly is our employee well-being. We've talked in the past about, mental health, and this kind of anxiety kind of makes it, even more so. What are we doing in that area? And people who've never had remote workers before, it's a new frontier for them. What are we doing in that area? So those are some of the things that we're seeing, and the questions that we're getting, and the content that we're going to really focus on. So the three key areas are capacity management, technology, and resourcing. How do we mitigate the volume? We've had self-service strategies for decades, but there may be some channel strategies that, we can really help to serve our customers and keep our employees not stressed out and burned out with the volume. And really talking about remote workers and also those people who are coming into work. What's the technology, what's the oversight, and how are we taking care of them from a training and coaching perspective as well. So that's what we're going to cover, and it won't all be in this one session, and we'll have a few other sessions to cover some of these areas.
Thank you, Afshan. Thank you. So there are some common questions that many people have been asking each other, and we thought we would highlight a couple of them today within this 1 hour period. So the first question, and Mike, if you have anyone that wants to participate after reading this first question, what are the ways to increase capacity? By all means, you can let me know. In the meantime, I'm going to ask Ivan from Star Telecom, what are ways to increase capacity?
Thank you, Sangeeta. So what we've seen, and this is across a number of clients and a number of different verticals, clients with cloud solutions have been able to increase that capacity almost on demand and accept additional call volumes. Clients who have on-premise solutions have been looking at how to enable remote agents, remote staff. A lot of the BCP plans that were put together 10, 15 years ago had an assumption that agents would have landlines in their homes that they could use, which is in a lot of cases not true anymore. So we're working with clients to deploy voice over IP to their agents' desktops and other strategies to get more capacity to their systems, both on the front end, meaning the telecom side where the carrier capacity is being stretched. And just as a side note for everybody who's on the call, this is confirmed. There are challenges with the capacity between carriers, so a lot of toll-free traffic is not able to complete. And so, a lot of you will be hearing from your customers or even staff if they're using numbers to dial in that it's not that those are not working consistently. And so, finding ways where that capacity can be provided through alternative means, whether it's a local number, using mobile data where that is possible, using voice over IP, and prioritizing those who really need access to the tools. Not running video if it's not necessary, and mixing channels in a way that's conducive to the business, so that agents who have trouble getting bandwidth or maybe on the lower bandwidth tasks such as chat and email, and those who are able to get bandwidth and handle voice, those are the agents who handle voice, and keeping real-time track of this.
Awesome. Thank you, Ivan. And Mike, did you have anyone that wanted to chime in?
Actually, no, there's no one at this point that's
cool.
raised their hand, but if anybody does want to make a comment, you can click on the raise their hand button or type it in the questions window.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. So Afshan, did you want to add in on what are the ways to increase capacity?
Certainly. It may not be increasing capacity, maybe just a strategy dealing with the capacity restraints and technology that you have. We have multiple channels that we talk to our customers through, chat, email, text messaging, and phone. And, in times like this, when you really have high call volumes, I think we've all experienced, duplication of, customers using multiple channels. And when there's long wait times, they send an email, they'll, try to chat, they'll try to, phone, and all that does is it creates more volume and more stress for, your employees and high frustration for customers. So, one strategy is just, close down your channels and just have one channel. It depends on, your brand and what you really want to do in terms of customer experience. It's been my experience that a customer will always remember forever how they were made to feel. And sometimes with written communication, it comes across cold or there's a misunderstanding, and it could have some negative, connotations. But if you set that expectation clearly, put all hands on deck on one channel, it's easier to kind of set the expectations for customers. And that way, as humans, we can reassure our customers and make a connection that, really exemplifies the brand, be clear with customers on what they can expect, ensure first contact resolution, help them with self-service options, train them, educate them. So there's a lot of value to do that, and you can actually control it a lot better. So that's one strategy. There are many other strategies, and again, it all depends on your brand.
Great. And I just want to let everyone know that we're going to be putting together a lot of notes from these questions, because I know it's a lot of information to take in, and it may be in line with what you're doing, or maybe it's something different from what you're doing. So we will put together some detailed notes for you, so it can support you better. So Neil, I'd love to ask. Sorry?
Oh, Sangeeta, it's Mike, sir, but I just want to mention there are a couple of questions from the audience as well related to this topic.
Okay, great.
Okay, the first one's coming from Brian, and it's, can companies provide support in a workforce model and still adhere to PCI or HIPAA requirements? And that's for a panel.
Great. So would someone want to jump in and answer that?
Sangeeta, I will handle the second part of that. So what we've seen for HIPAA specifically, there is an exemption waiver being put in place with regulators understanding that these are times where something like this may be needed for companies to adapt. So we're seeing regulatory shifts in requirements for compliance in order for organizations to be able to serve customers and provide remote workers an environment where they may not be able to do that under HIPAA or PCI compliance. So there are exemptions, and I think that's going to happen across different certifications.
Okay, thank you. Mike, any other questions or?
There is actually, there's one also related to this from Chad, and he asks about agent management. What are key agent considerations I should be thinking about for new agents that are moving to this environment? They've never worked from home before. So what's your advice for that? And that's from Chad.
So, does anyone want to tackle that question? And if not, we can save it and we'll find someone with the answer.
There's, I was just going to say that's a really big question, and you know, I think you know, I think we're coming to that with respect to remote workers a little bit later.
Okay.
So,
okay.
there.
Let's save that. Okay, cool. Okay. So the next question: how can we deflect or mitigate volumes? So Neil, if you could share with some of your insights on this.
Sure, Sangeeta, and I just wanted to thank everybody on this call who are leading in this crisis, and thank you all for doing your jobs, because we're also all customers, and I know I need you guys to be doing your jobs for you know, supporting all the different things that are going on. So I just want to say I appreciate all of you. Sangeeta, did you want me to answer the last question at all, the capacity question, or jump to the?
Maybe we'll just jump to this one, if you're good with that.
Sure. I think there's probably some overlapping tactics. I think one of the things I would also preface what I'm about to say with is that we're providing a bunch of different tactics that can be used. It will definitely depend on your business. It'll definitely depend, you know, on where you're at with remote agents. And as Sangeeta has said, we're going to have a handout that has more comprehensive answers. So the ones that we don't get to, we'll get some more information on. So certainly some of the ways to mitigate volume, and this also impacts capacity planning, is something I call policy lightning, which really means taking a look at your biggest contact drivers and seeing where you may have process or policies in place that in a normal business state might make sense. Perhaps they're fraud or risk policies or process, extra steps customers have to take, burden of proof. Depending on your business, there's a whole bunch of different reasons why you may have steps in place for customers. This is a great time to weigh the pros and cons of that. There might be some additional risk in lightening those policies, but the benefit to being able to lower handle times, the benefit to being able to, which impacts your capacity, the benefit to being able to automate some resolutions through, for example, if you have a call type and you know that you're always going to honor your policy no matter what, you can automatically send outbound email or outbound SMS or have an IVR message in place. So if you start to lighten policies, you're really going to be able to impact both your capacity in shortened handle times potentially, but also mitigate volume through some automation or manual work that you can do as well in the back end to make resolutions happen faster without tying up the queues.
Great, thank you, Neil. So Ivan, did you want to add in how we can deflect or mitigate the volumes?
Yeah, so keeping in line with what Neil mentioned, and it's really keeping a close watch on what is driving calls, what are the specific call drivers, and trying to address those in self-service and IVR through either pre-recorded messaging or providing URLs for clients to look up, being transparent about long wait times and you know, challenges getting to a live person, and using tools that make that communication efficient. So SMS, outbound IVR, queue announcements, network announcements, queue callback is certainly something that can be used to mitigate both the capacity and deflect some of the call volume or defer it, so it's not tying up the telecom lines. So those are some of the tools that we've seen used to handle the flood of calls that are coming in.
Okay, awesome. Afshan, did you want to add in anything?
I did. I call it invest now, reap later strategy. And, I have met lots of folks who lead call centers, and everyone's focused on average handle time. I think this is the time to kind of let it go. And I would advocate that we increase our average handle time now to show our customers how to self-serve. It's going to be a big tsunami right now, and it's going to subside. And who knows what will happen in the long term in terms of people getting ill. You have more capacity issues because of that. And so if you need fewer people by moving more people to self-service, is really a good strategy. And what I recommend is that you identify 3 or 4 high-frequency inquiries or requests, and make sure those are the ones that all of your team members know how to do. So they can validate with the customer, whether they know how to access something on the website, as an inquiry or to complete a request. And if there's a gap, instead of the reminder tactic, take them to the site, show them how to use and find the information. I find that when clients and team members work together, it actually satisfies the customer, and it's actually very satisfactory for the team member as well. So if you can train and coach your team members, you're going to have to do it remotely, whether it's over the phone or through a webinar or e-learning. Be fluid in 3 to 4 inquiries, and you'll see a reduction in your phone calls. And also one other thing is that you can repeat this again with the next 3 and the next 3, and I think it'll have a positive gain.
Thanks, Afshan. Thank you. So, Mike, was there any questions or comments before I move to the next question?
There was actually one in there. A couple of them in there, just about, but how is deflecting call volume strategies going to impact the overall customer effort and customer experience? So just a question there in terms of helping to move volume over. And I guess sort of along with that, the idea about keeping the customer success, the customer experience going as well. So just how will that affect that? I know it's sort of a short-term Band-Aid piece. How does that affect the long-term as well? So just a question from the audience.
Yeah. So would someone like to take that question?
Sure, I could take that question, Sangeeta. I think it's how you decide to do it and for what reasons. So and what call types. So I think where we're going to have to help our frontline with greater empathy and customer relatedness, training, because these are scary times for people, financially as well as job security. And so I think what you're going to deflect is really important. So if it's self-service on basic transactions where escalations and where they need you the most, I don't think you can deflect. So I think you have to be judicious in determining what you're deflecting and what you're not.
Okay, cool.
Yes,
thank you.
I would just add in everything that Afshan said. I would also just stress that whole point of how do you deflect, not so much from the perspective of turning away service, with the maybe rare exception of high prioritization travel industry, in which case most of the travel industry has been incredibly transparent with customers, which I think is critical if you're going to do any deflection on prioritization, that you are doing outbound messaging to say, hey, in that particular example, hey, if your flight is not within 3 days, we do ask you to hang on. We will get to you, but we're focusing on the most urgent first. But aside from that, when you're doing your deflection, the focus really, and I know I'm going to repeat a little bit on policy lightning, but the focus really should be not on how do you deflect away service, but how do you simplify service so there's not a need for the contact, in which case the customer experience ends up being improved. So if you all of a sudden lighten policy on a certain thing where you'd have to call and wait, but now all of a sudden you get an email that says, hey, don't even bother calling, and we actually automatically did this for you. That's an incredible customer experience that also mitigates volume. So just a food for thought on deflection.
Yeah, great point. Awesome, thank you. Okay, next question, and I know this is a very robust one I'm hearing lots from. How can we help our employees' well-being both in the office and our remote workers in these uncertain times? So Mike, before we start with our panel members, is there anyone raising a hand or question?
Well, there is. I believe actually Lisa Running has a comment about this to go and share. Lisa, I'm just going to unmute your microphone so you're able to go and share with us over the phone. And then also
Great.
after that, I think Elizabeth and also Linnell have comments as well. But Lisa, please go ahead.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you panelists and Sangeeta and Mike for opening up this great conversation today. Just to give a little bit of context to participants, our center at CI Financial, we had 0 agents working from home pre-COVID, and end of day today will be 100% agents working from home on their own tech. And so it's been an interesting couple of weeks. But if we had to reflect on a couple of things that have helped us to make that transition, the first thing would be the use of Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams, what we've found is it allows us to listen to our team members, collaborate with our team members, create connection with one another. And so it's a great platform, instant messaging, team meetings, video conferencing, screen share, and so it was really fundamental in terms of supporting the transition of our team members from the office to work from home, which was very uncharted territory for them and for us. I would say the second thing that's really been helpful in supporting the well-being of our teams on a personal level, as well as just the health of the overall center, is that our management operating system routines, things like huddles, stand-ups, one-on-ones, sometimes out of necessity because we're running in 100 different directions, the tendency is to drop something like that. But I would say to you that our stand-ups and our huddles at CI, we made them a priority through this transition, and wherever possible, we increased the frequency. And we're encouraging, like myself, my team, we're joining those huddles, turning on our webcams so our teams can see us and we can see them. In order to hear firsthand how they're feeling on a personal level, what they're dealing with, helping to remove barriers, high-fiving them when things are going well. We're encouraging our team members, even though, I think when we're working from home, we may kind of toss our hair up in a bun and not put on lip gloss and so what we said to people is, when we all go home, let's try to use our webcams as much as possible, because there's real magic that happens when you can see one another, not just hear one another. So we've had some fun with that. Pet introductions to people's kids, funny hats, crazy costumes, and the latest was today. I was in a meeting just before this, and somebody had shared an exercise video that they were doing. So I would say to you, that although my contribution here is light in terms of the people side, what we've found in being able to have fun with people and to be there and create mechanisms of support, that they produce more and they're happier producing it. And the only other thing that I would end with is, I think we went into this with an understanding that we've really got to trust our people that they want to do a good job. And how is it that we enable that? Through being supportive and being compassionate and understanding that not everybody will be on this journey in the same way. Not everybody wants to work from home. Not everybody can work from home. Their environment may not be conducive to that, or they might not be as comfortable on their tech as they are on corporate issued tech. So I think wherever possible, we tried to say that even though we've got policy and procedure and things that help us to perform as a business, we know that not everybody fits into that model, and people will be experiencing this in different ways and have different levels of anxiety, ability, etc. And so we tried wherever possible to be flexible, compassionate, and empathetic. And what we're finding is that we're not experiencing too much of a blip in our service levels and our team productivity. And the way that they are using the platform like Microsoft Teams to support one another makes them so much more effective. They help each other to succeed, and they help each other to overcome obstacles.
That's awesome.
It's been an exciting couple of weeks, but it's been all about our people.
And thank you, and thanks for sharing that. And I'm glad to hear the word fun during these stressful times. So thanks for sharing, Lisa.
Thank you.
And
Mike,
Sangeeta, we have someone else who's raised their hand now. It's Elizabeth Sedlacek. So Elizabeth, and I'll mute you as well so you can share your ideas of what you're doing there.
Mike.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Mike.
Hi there.
Hi. Appreciate the opportunity to share. So regarding what we're doing on site with our associates at Contact Point 360, What's been extremely helpful in lowering anxiety is that we actually have hired nurses that are at all of our sites, and they're checking up on our staff, and they're actually available for anything they need and any questions they may have. So that's been exceptionally helpful in lowering anxiety. Also, with having multiple sites, our workforce management team has been fantastic as they've been able to shift schedules to provide flexibility for the people that are on site with children and elderly parents that are counting on them. So with respect to our people working from home, totally support, Lisa, exactly what you said. It was beautifully said. We also believe that providing confident leadership and clear communication on a regular basis is key to managing the remote workforce, especially to some of our associates that are new. They've never been in a remote working environment before. To share a couple of our best practices, we've conducted, again, same as Lisa, team huddles via Zoom, pre-shift, mid-shift, and daily wrap-up. Our team leaders, this is the key for us, is our team leaders are showing fantastic confidence and telling our people, you got this. But they're also listening to their stress, and they're also just giving them some advice on an hourly basis just to make sure they're okay. And I think that's been like an emotional temperature check and providing this confidence and support. We've opened up a Zoom conference, and the teams are actually eating together like they would gather in the lunchroom. So it's about not having them feel isolated. And we're offering free online classes to our people through our CP360 University. And it includes work-related, but also self-improvement and family-related content. So for us overall, it's really about clear communication, confident leadership, and trust in your people. Thanks for letting me share my.
Love it.
Okay, oh, definitely. And so just a quick follow-up question as well. This is from Neil in the group, and he just asked you about how many agents does Contact Point 360 have? I guess just get a better bearing in terms of what you're doing versus the size of the contact center.
So we have 5 sites. We just have over 1,000 agents, and we are in South America and in North America.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Elizabeth. And I'm going to ask Lisa the same question as well. So Lisa, I just unmuted you. Lisa, again, the question from Neil in the audience is about how many agents does CI Financial have? Again, just to get a better gauge about how these things work with big and small call centers.
Yeah, thank you. Thankfully, because we were 0 agents, not work from home, and needed to get to full in a very short period of time, I'm thankful to say we are a nice small center over here at CI. We're all told about 100 people. So we needed to migrate 100 people. So not the scale definitely that Elizabeth is dealing with. I'm just bowing down in terms of what they're doing over there at Contact Point 360.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lisa. And as well, I got another tip from the audience as well, from Elizabeth, a different Elizabeth. It's just mentioning that what one of her clients has done is just help with social communication by sending videos and photos of each other to their remote work environments, and also implementing contests for funniest photo, etc. So again, helping to go and help all the people working individually at home still feel like part of a bigger overall team. So Elizabeth, different Elizabeth, thank you very much for sharing that with us as well. And Sangeeta, I'll turn things back over to you.
Oh, okay, great. So I'd like to take this question because it is so critical. And although technology is amazing, everything is circled around people and the human experience. So I'm going to ask Neil if you could address this first. How can we help our team members?
I actually think our attendees did an incredible job of covering off on a lot of the things you can do. I would echo a lot of their comments. I think over communication is a far less riskier proposition than under communication right now. You know, whether that be you know, I would say at minimum daily huddles or team meetings. Certainly MS Teams and Zoom are good tools you can use. There's also tools like Slack, Facebook Workplace. There's a few different ways you can leverage technology. Some actually Slack you can leverage for free up to quite a high degree of messaging before they start charging. So definitely daily touch bases, lots of communication. Transparency is by the way, none of these things are things you shouldn't be doing all the time. They're just actually more amplified right now. But I would say transparency is a critical one. I think sometimes there's a tendency to be worried about how employees might be feeling about how a company is reacting to either this particular crisis or staffing or volume or layoffs or health. But the reality is the longer you hold back information, the more and your workforce will create their own truth, and I promise their own truth is almost always scarier than the real truth. So be transparent, be honest, share your weaknesses. It affords you a lot of grace and understanding with your team, and it also starts to generate ideas that you can start to tap into within your workforce who may have other perspectives that you haven't thought of to help solve those problems. Definitely adjusting expectations and showing compassion. Change is always stressful. This is far more stressful because of the health impacts. Consider mental wellness beyond. I love the nurse on site at Contact Point 360. I know many of you have programs through companies like Chappelle, but even going further, how can you potentially up benefits or give time for people to get therapy if that's what they need? And create support tools. I think Avshan touched on this. Create support tools for them. It doesn't have to be pretty. I think sometimes people don't like to put things out that aren't perfect, but now is the time to put things out that aren't perfect. Aesthetics be damned, and if anyone who knows me, I'm critical on aesthetics, so I'm saying this to myself. Aesthetics be damned, just get the information out, get the FAQs, the scripts, the screenshots. If things are changing, if policies are changing, if you're changing your website and offering new self-serve tools, get the screenshots to your agents, or if there's no time for them to actually go through the experience. If there's common questions and you've just changed a policy to make things easier, what's the scripting? Even though I would never advocate to adhere to a script, it's a fast stopgap measure to get them at least comfortable answering those questions until they can make it their own. Empowering your agents is critical. There is too much changing too fast. I think, I forgot who said it. I think it might have been Lisa, and I loved it, which is trust your employees. They do want to do well. In fact, if 1 in 100 didn't want to do well, the effort you would put to try to manage that one person will dramatically deteriorate both employee and customer experience for everybody else. So this is a great time to empower your team. Communicate often, let them have a sense of the overall outcome, but let go of some of the small stuff. Obviously, you're not going to be stressing over whether they say a customer's name 3 times on a quality form. Be very open to them to make some decisions on the fly, to be innovative, and represent you, and they will represent you really well. I can go on and on. I don't want to take too much time, but those are just a few things that popped up, and definitely echoing what Lisa and Elizabeth said.
All fantastic points. And Afshan, did you want to add anything here?
Everyone's just said it so well and eloquently, honest to goodness. If I was to quickly summarize this, don't leave your team members to, fend for themselves. Sometimes high call volume and stress like this means that, leadership walks around, tries to help people. Be in the moment, be side by side with them, not physically, but, over the phone or through webinar or whatever, because they're going to have knowledge gaps. They won't know how to handle certain questions that are coming up that they've never experienced before. And so sometimes 15 minutes of training or support now will just give a lot of value in terms of reducing repeat calls or just making them want to, come to work, and be able to kind of handle, the stress of so many calls every day. So I think, that's really important. And the other part is let's share stories of wins and where, customers are happy. One of my clients just recently told me that they've hit the highest NPS score they've ever had in their history this last week. And so that just goes to show how much customers do appreciate, that contact and that relatedness and that ability to, say, we're here for you. So I think, those wins and those stories about employees who've gone the extra mile and customers who, have thrilled with service as an example. I think, those are very important because we're hearing a lot of negative out there in terms of doom and gloom.
Thank you, Afshan. Very good points. And all of you said it so, like you put a great package together with, and the repetition, some points needed that because it's all about right now compassion for others and believing in them to rise to the occasion. So thank you all for sharing on this question. So our next question, how can we move part or all of our teams to remote workers? Because, that's the intention. How do we start that process? as we saw on the poll, not everybody is at 100% right now. So Ivan, what is a great way to start that, and how do we do it?
Well, I think each organization has to look at what their strategy, what makes sense for their customer experience, for the type of calls that they're handling, for the type of inquiries that they're handling, and then decide which agents are appropriate based on channel and skill to move off site. And the tools to do that, and this is what we've been working with clients, is enable the voice for agents, helping them with bandwidth issues, or just tools to help agents. And this is where your IT is probably going to be overstretched, is finding the tools to help quickly assist agents to determine whether they can handle voice from their home. So there's a speed tests, different speed tests. There's one from Canadian organization that I'll share with Sangeeta to pass to everybody. And so being efficient at helping those agents be remote is a part of the toolkit, and troubleshooting those, helping the IT troubleshoot those issues. But voice over IP connectivity for voice, looking at whether it's network queuing that's in the cloud where the agents can log in, or some way to get the agents connected into the corporate system. And if you haven't completely enabled channels, but you have, again, as Neil said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you're almost ready with chat, if you're almost ready with SMS, if you're almost ready with email or whatever you haven't fully enabled, maybe this is the time to do it if it's appropriate. Again, going back to the strategy perspective, looking at what that means in your vertical for your customers, for the types of interactions that you're handling.
Thank you. Neil, Afshan, did either one of you want to chime in here?
Go ahead, Neil.
No, I
was going to say, go ahead, Afshan.
Yeah, go ahead, Afshan. Most of what I would have added here, because I think the tech piece is really the enabling piece. Most of what I would have added here was really part of what we just spoke about, which is how do you more support people. I think Ivan more addressed how do you actually enable it from a technology standpoint, and I don't have anything to add beyond what Ivan.
Okay, great. And Mike, is there anything from the audience, the attendees?
I'm not directly related to this part of it. There were a couple of things, though. One of them was a tip in terms of just the focus in terms of, well, it's an emergency situation right now, to always bear in mind that it's good once the emergency is over. This is from actually Eli. I'm kind of paraphrasing his words here, to make sure that you do actually look back in terms of sort of almost doing a post-mortem on what happened. So when everything's settled down in terms of what worked well, what should be changed, etc., really focused on continuous improvement. The fact that continuous improvement shouldn't stop, or should at least be picked up again once the emergency is over. And also to make sure that you do, ask your frontline employees and ask your frontline leaders in terms of what their experiences were. And also too, in terms of looking in terms of a question, there was one which is quite interesting about workforce management, kind of related to the remote workers piece, which is in terms of planning for everyone to ultimately be on the safe side, especially as more employees become symptomatic. And so how can companies kind of bear that in mind as well? Because you could suddenly have people calling in sick along with us and be out for 14 days. Just, I guess that's a question for the panel as well.
Does anyone want to tackle that question?
Sorry, what was specifically the question, Mike?
Specifically in this case, it's about what would you do in terms of workforce management if you're having employees call in that unfortunately, hopefully they don't, but unfortunately do have coronavirus and therefore can't work for a number of days or weeks. How do you start working around that when you get big chunks of your workforce calling in like that? How do you plan workforce management?
I think it starts with the strategy now. And so we talked about it in terms of, being able to have ways to reduce capacity, in terms of the volume coming in, increase resources in terms of optimizing those. And so, at the end of the day, this is very serious. And, if people are, isolating themselves, they should be, it's their right to be. And so we just have to kind of deal with it and allow that. And then, be strategic. And we may have, a lot of bumps along the way, but I think, as the strategies take place, it'll level out. So at the end of the day, it's all new to us. When you think of yourself as a customer, I think there's a great deal of patience that customers are, feeling, with knowing that it's a crazy time. So I think, we have that level of understanding in the community at large, as well as, you just have to be respectful of everybody's needs. And yes, the business needs to go on, but I think it's up to leaders to stand up now and show some great leadership, with respect to the strategies that they have.
Thanks. Thank you, Afshan.
Thank you. Actually, if I just would add
Sure.
on, I think Afshan really nailed it. And then going back to the notion of strategy, there's not really much you can do. I wouldn't even say it's a workforce management issue. Certainly, workforce management can be a big contributor by running scenarios on different attendance levels, different shrinkage levels. Keep in mind, shrinkage, will be different, not just even with traditional remote workers, but shrinkage will be different because remote workers are often in a situation now where their families are home from school or other people are in the house that make it harder for them to be 100% focused. So, and you have to allow for that. Of course, you can't, stand over them and force them to ignore their families, and nor would you. So, I think running scenarios at different shrinkage levels and different absenteeism levels can help inform that strategy to say, look, if we have a 5% or 10% spike in absenteeism or 5 or 10% increase in shrinkage, what does that look like from a capacity standpoint? And then when we go back to those questions we asked in the beginning around call deflection, call mitigation, and capacity, what are some of the preparations we might want to proactively start now? We didn't even talk about it on this call. I know it'll be in the handout, but we had, we have stuff around how can you leverage less trained people for triage or to handle offline work? How do you ramp up that workforce so that the capacity you have within your center can focus on the most critical interactions? How can you potentially reduce your hours of operation, which can seem counterintuitive to customer service, but if you are stretched beyond a full shift, if you are running, let's say, an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. kind of call center, you may actually gain a lot from and of course communicating to customers proactively about this, but about shrinking yourself down to a single shift, and all of a sudden you have full overlap of your entire workforce. It's not going to change the number of unique calls that come into your contact center, but it will have a dramatic impact on how many people are repeat calling. People can repeat call 5 to 20, sometimes even more times statistically when the abandonment rate is high, which only artificially creates more queue time and more wait time for customers. So condensing that shift is a way. But the long story short is workforce management's role here, I think from my perspective, is building those scenarios to inform the strategy. But the solution here is, what's your strategy? I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, if I could just add one more point, do you mind, Sangeeta?
Yeah, we've got one more, like 2 minutes.
And one more point just around that part is that, one of the benefits of having people work from home is you can work with them in partnership. And so if they come into the office because they've driven in or, transited in, they may have to work 9 to 5, but you could take that, 7.5 hours and split them in other, hours where you really need them. So you have an opportunity with a remote workforce to really optimize, the occupancy, because there are going to be lulls, during the day. And that's kind of the advantage of having remote, workforce is, that maybe they would like to, have some family time first thing in the morning and breakfast. So they, may start at 10:30, work till 1 o'clock, take a break, and, work again maybe later at night. So those types of options that fit lifestyle are open.
Great. Thank you, Afshan. Thanks, Neil. Great insight.
And Sangeeta, it's Mike. I've also got some of the audience, Disha, who also had a comment to go and make as well. So I'm just going to unmute them now. There you go. So Disha, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is Disha here. You pronounced it correctly. I'm from Nestle Canada's Consumer Services team. Last week, in the midst of how things were evolving, we did take a proactive approach and we changed our hours of operation, irrespective of how much volume we were anticipating. Just in the essence of that, though we know everybody's going through this transition of working remotely, our employees are going through that as well. So we proactively just narrowed our hours of operations, and on the phones, we're still operating normal hours on other channels. And we gave our employees the confidence that if you need some time with your family just to unplug, it's all about you at this point. So I think it's a give and take relationship with your employees, and how just make sure that you're available for them and support them in everything that they need. So that's definitely been helpful for us. I've got great feedback from our team that they feel really supported, and if they need to unplug for 15 minutes and just take their eyes off their screen, we absolutely support it. So I
Wonderful.
I think that's definitely been helpful.
Great.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. So as we wrap up in the last 10 minutes, we really want to hear from our attendees. So we've heard a lot of ideas around how to prepare our team members. So how else should our expectations and preparations change? Thinking about handle times, remote workers, school closures, increase for FDR, what else should change? And Mike, is there anyone that we could hear from in the audience?
I do have actually, Eli actually has raised his hand from the audience. So Eli, I'm going to unmute you if you want to comment on this question. Eli, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Mike, and hi, everyone, and I hope you're keeping well. Mike, thanks for paraphrasing earlier. In speaking with our clients, one of the things I've been talking to a number of companies about is it's really easy right now to get caught, and maybe caught's not the right word, but to just be completely focused on how to survive, and it's totally understandable. The reality is that what we're facing is likely to be with us for an extended period of time, at least till a vaccine is found. So what we're trying to do is keep people focused on the long term, the 12 to 18 months, more so not to forget about it. So a couple of comments there. One is, if you do any type of remote process automation, I heard some comments, Neil was talking about call deflection earlier. A terrific way to increase self-serve is to automate as many processes as you can. So if you have that capability, and typically takes between six weeks and 3 months to fully automate a process effectively, don't put that aside because it's going to take too much time. Start doing that now, because we're really going to be in a new normal for quite a while, even as things settle in about 2 to 4 months. So it's mostly a view to the future state, and that also includes the continuous improvement comment that Mike talked about. That's where that was coming from. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. So Mike, is there any other questions?
You're welcome, Eli. No, I don't see any other hands raised on this one. There were a couple of other comments that were made. One is Eric made a comment in terms of getting back to the idea about remote workers, that there is a lot of anxiety as some agents are being asked to go and work from home versus in the office, as well as physical constraints, such as having to provide sudden workstations, remote VPNs, and of course monitors, desktops, etc. So some definite issues in terms of being able to work around that. But something else that might be unique and the panel might want to address is, what do you do from an HR perspective, or leadership perspective, if you have agents that are refusing to work from home? And for whatever reasons, how would you address that issue? So it's a question for the panel.
That's an interesting question.
I think it's, there are individuals who want to be in the office, and having that 6 feet of separation if you have the room, and you take precautions to sanitize, and they have support. I think, the challenge is probably more on the leadership side. They feel that they have to come into the office. But again, it's a real estate issue. If you're in a very small office, I think you just have to have a conversation, with that individual, and there may be a misguided sense of loyalty. And so sometimes you just have to give them permission to say it's okay, so that's how I would handle it.
Right. Thanks. And anything else there, Mike? Or does anyone else want to chime in on any of the questions we discussed? Because sometimes thoughts come later after the fact.
So Sangeeta, I can add just something, in kind of view of this huge thing that's facing us all. Working in the telecom and carrier side of things, we are seeing an incredible desire for everybody to come together and help resolve this. So carriers are especially if they're told, and we have a few clients who work in telehealth space, that this is what capacity is for. Some of the barriers that sort of slowness that carriers are traditionally associated with, that's gone. That things are moving quickly if they're aligned. And I think with us organization, with others, we are getting focused. Everybody's getting focused on how do we work together to solve this and to overcome this and to get through it. And there's a sense of togetherness that I haven't seen before. Working with sharing information and just working aligned on this goal together.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ivan. I agree with Eli. This is a forever thing. This is going to change the way, consumer behavior is going to change the way we run our operations. I think this is for the long term, even if they do find a cure, because certain behaviors will be, set in, and we'll find some best practices along the way. That's the, silver lining on this cloud.
Okay. Sangeeta, it's Jeff Doran here.
Hey, Jeff.
I've been listening to all of the great conversations. It's been fantastic. And I guess the one thing that struck me, and it was, again, back to what Eli was talking about, we're really going to have to change the way we strategize and operate functionally as contact centers. And I think one of the big things, if we're thinking about including a work at home model, obviously, if you're already doing it, you probably have an incubator program. A lot of my clients have set those up. But I think the reality is these programs need to be on steroids. People need to be ramping up a lot quicker to be able to react to these kinds of situations. So I think if you have an incubator program, you need to take a look at condensing your timelines to move people from the bricks and mortar into their homes as quickly as you can. And then from there, you're able to, I think, have a better handle on workforce management and dealing with the issues that come up from getting these massive groups of people in a different setting and getting it working and functioning properly.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Yes?
Yep. I've got 3 little quick questions from the audience as well. One of them's for Ivan. This one's from Mary. Just as a follow-up to your comment about PIPA, she just want to confirm, Ivan, that the restrictions of PIPA have been relaxed, and if so, is there a link you can provide that just kind of backs that up, or that she?
So it was a HIPAA actually that the exemption is related to. So the U.S. version of the Health Compliance Act. But I expect that that's what regulators are going to go to, because I mean, it's really the only way to handle this unprecedented situation is to relax temporarily, or for whatever period is necessary, some of the constraints and regulatory requirements that have been put in place. So it's related to HIPAA. I can provide a link to
and I'm happy to connect you guys. I'll connect you guys. Okay, Mike, any other questions before we wrap up?
Thanks, Ivan. A quick little question as well from Teresa, which is, we've talked about increased call volumes, but her question is the opposite, which is, how do you handle staff morale when call volume decreases a lot? Because some places apparently have had big drop-offs in call volume. What do you do there? Neil, if you want to chime in, or Afshan, Ivan?
I'll let it.
Sure. I mean, I don't really have anything all that disruptive or innovative to say. I think this is a challenge that can happen at the best of times, let alone now. And there's certainly always things like employee development and training, ways to ramp up if depending on how your training and development cycle looks. Some companies have ongoing training and different tiers of agents. A great time to ramp up skill. A great time to work on some of these projects. I know Eli talked about some things can take time, and maybe it just feels like you don't have the time. And if you do, then it's a great time to start to look at it, because I want to underscore a point that's already been underscored a few times. 5 years from now, forget what's happening right now. Consumer behavior is permanently shifted in terms of how much is moving online. This is just pushing it in a much faster way. So leveraging staff to look at some of those online capabilities and automation of processes. There are lots of ways you can tap into the workforce that's sitting in if call volumes dropped off.
Yeah, you know,
Okay.
I would agree with you, Neil, not disagree. I think, you know, with, you know, learning machines and, you know, what's coming up for us, this is accelerating, you know, the fact that we have to help our folks with critical thinking. You know, one of the areas that, you know, I see a lot is, you know, I hear back from leaders and they say things like, you know, I don't know why they couldn't make the decision, or, you know, why did they make that decision? And so it's not the low-hanging fruit anymore. It's really the advanced thinking and, you know, dealing with complex issues that we should be training on, you know, versus the simple product stuff.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Afshan. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No.
Just out of respect for people's time, it is 3 o'clock. And I thank you all to all the panelists, Mike for moderating, Ivan, Afshan, Neil, and everyone who participated. We are going to have webinars weekly as long as people need them. And to get information on the webinars, you can just join GTACC, GTACC.ca. And once you join, you'll be getting the updates of the webinar. So next Friday, given that everyone is under such stress, we thought we'd bring in someone whose really expertise is around resiliency. She's a psychotherapist, Jamie Sable, and she will do the first part of our webinar to really help us cope with stress and learn to have the tools so that we are more resilient in the process, because this is not going away anytime soon. So that's why we thought we should bring someone that can help us right away as we navigate through this journey. So I want to be respectful because I know everybody has a tight schedule. Thank you once again, everyone, and hope to see you at our next webinar. And with that, I will end. Thank you, Mike, Afshan, Neil, Ivan, Jeff, for your guidance as we prepared this at the last minute, and to all the participants who chimed in as well. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.